And let's talk about the impact potential that we have on land. We have Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel joining us from Folly Beach, South Carolina, not too far from Charleston. We're taking a look at Folly Beach there at the pier, at least, where the rain looked like it maybe was falling. I don't know, Mike. I mean, how's it looking from your perspective there at the beach?
It is raining just a little bit. It just started a few minutes ago. We're at the pier. We've been here for several days, and there's not much difference this morning, except we do have some rain. Now, we had a few showers Saturday afternoon. Yesterday was gorgeous. Not much sun, but there was a breeze, and it was cloudy, and there was a pretty decent Sunday crowd out here at Folly. There's the surf, and it has come up a little bit. We're still not getting much of the swell from Umberto. I did check the buoys offshore. Edisto, that buoy is about 45 or so miles offshore. Their highest wave height reported this morning at 6.2 feet. So that's where we stand offshore. Onshore, we're talking 4-footers. And also notice the sharp edge to the cloud right out here. It is raining very, very hard. I don't know if you can discern it on live TV, but with the naked eye, you can see the shaft coming down and the visibility dropping off just to the left of the end of the pier. A couple surfers out this morning. Let me show you the surfers from yesterday. It was a good day for surfing, despite the wave heights not being cranked up yet. 3 to 4 footers, and we had a couple of guys and gals I caught on tape on the pier taking these waves for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, and then getting back out there. So that's what you deal with. You take what you can get in life, right? And there's some surfers out this morning. Not as many as over the weekend. Obviously, some of these folks actually have to head to work on a Monday morning. Speaking of that, schools are open. They didn't do anything with the schools, which is probably the right move as far as rainfall. Now the track is going to take it the closest approach later on tonight and early Tuesday morning. I calculated using the latitude longitude from here and the forecast point at 2 a.m. Tuesday morning. The center, now this is the center at 367 miles from Folly Beach. That is a long way off. Remember, it has increased. Yesterday morning, the distance based on the 5 a.m. forecast was about 265 miles. So it is now going to be 50% farther away. Instead of 260-ish, now about 360-ish. And that means the impacts are even less and really impacts the rainfall. Look at that rainfall forecast. Less than a half an inch we expect in Charleston. Now, with that said, if a heavier shower or squall gets in over your rain gauge, you may have a bit more, but certainly way down. And remember, I want to emphasize last week when the American model, the GFS, and the European were bringing this in as a landfall and a slow mover, some of the forecasts were 15, 20, 25 inches of rain. So this is a big change, and this is what we need. Also, because it's going to be so far offshore and pulling away, storm surge is off the table. Overwash pretty much off the table here. We'll have some beach erosion. In fact, we have some beach hazards, rip currents today. In the statement that'll likely be reissued tomorrow, but also certainly the high surf, and that goes until Saturday morning at 8 a.m. So we're going to have high surf issues all week long because of Imelda and Umberto's waves coming at us. So if you're coming down to the beach, even though the sun is going to be back out tomorrow and the rest of the week, it's going to be very fallish here because of that wind, drier air, and highs will be generally 75 to 80. So good beach weather, but the rip currents will be, I think, still a factor. Remember, these beaches now are unguarded this time of the year. So, you know, swim with a friend, or my suggestion for the next several days at least, don't go in past your ankles because you can get caught in a rip current. So, Marissa, it all turned out pretty good here and up and down the East Coast. The only real issue we're going to have is, again, Cape Hatteras, south of the bridge, Buxton and Ocracoke Island. There could be some overwash there at time of high tide over the next couple of days, but those areas are so susceptible anytime you have an onshore wind.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, they're very vulnerable to that onshore wind. So monitoring those, but to your point, dodging another one here. And then I think as we watch the evolution into Wednesday, as you noted, so the dew points even into Wednesday are going to drop down to the 50s. So by the time we get to October 1st, Mike, it's going to feel a lot like fall, but staying out of the water, very important to note there. All right, Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel joining us out of Folly Beach, South Carolina. Thanks, Mike. Let's go ahead and take it closer to the coast, but we're going to go further north out of Florida. We want to take it over to Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel. Mike is joining us out of Folly Beach, South Carolina. A look at the pier. Temperatures in the 70s, winds out of the northeast, water looking real choppy, and not a lot of people to take in those views. But we do have Mike out there on the beach. Mike, I was trying to remember, I'm not sure where you were stationed for Gabrielle, but I do remember with Hurricane Aaron, you were also hanging out in this, I believe, the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But yet again, standing here, my point, during the season, dodging what could have been a very different scenario.
Yeah, certainly last week we thought we may have a landfall. The models are predicting upwards of 25 plus inches of rain in the Carolina Low Country, the coast, and even back to I-95, and even a significant rainfall in western North Carolina, now just about a year and a few days past the devastation of Helene. So things turned around very, very nicely. It couldn't have turned out any better. Imelda formed yesterday as a depression. It was upgraded at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be way off the coast. In fact, I measured the distance at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, late tonight, early Tuesday morning, and where we're standing. And right now, we're talking about 365 miles south-southeast. That is a long way away. And what does that mean for us? Well, that takes the surge impact off the table. Beach erosion is still on the table because we are going to have the high surf for the rest of the week. We really haven't gotten much of the swell from Umberto. It's starting to come in. The outer buoys showing us 6 to 7 footers. Right here, we're looking at about 3 to 4 footers. You can see the white caps. It's more churned up. And unlike yesterday, we have very few surfers out today. One of the reasons is it's Monday and not the weekend. There was a lot of surfers out here over the weekend. The tide is coming in. Next tide about 1 o'clock, 12:50 here at Folly Beach. And the tide has been coming up to about here. And it may come up a little higher tonight or today and tonight. But after that, our winds are going to be kind of moving more offshore or paralleling the coast because they have this big high in the Great Lakes coming across the northeast, and that's channeling in drier air. So tomorrow we're looking for a sunny, beautiful fall day here in South Carolina on the coast, and that will be the trend all week. Highs will stay away from 80, and our lows at night, at least off the beach, will in the interior will drop down into the 50s. So very comfortable weather coming in. So we've got the surf issues. Again, high surf, rip currents. These beaches are now unguarded because it is almost October. So my suggestion over the next several days is do not go in beyond your ankles. If you're going to go in, say, waist deep, have someone with you. But those rip currents can take even incredible swimmers out to sea, and we don't want anybody to lose their lives. That is always an issue with late season hurricanes and tropical storms because beaches are typically unguarded unless you're down in Florida and you don't have the guards that you can swim by. As far as rainfall, that has dropped considerably too. Look at the forecast now for this area. Less than a half an inch. We were showing on Saturday 3 to 5 inches. Yesterday it went to 1 to 3. Now we're thinking less than a half an inch. Look at the radar. I've been following this all morning, and you'll notice as the precipitation echoes move towards the coast, they dissipate, they evaporate. I guess there's some drier air coming in, but so far all we've had is a little light rain shower. That was an hour ago. The streets did get wet. That's the breaking news this morning, if you want to throw in some sarcasm and snark. But Marissa, it is just turning out to be, really a godsend on the track, and we can thank Umberto. Now we can throw Umberto in there, and in fact, most of the waves, the higher waves, probably that swell will come from Umberto and not so much from Imelda over the next several days. High surf advisory in effect here until Saturday morning at this point. The only real impact as far as overwash and the coastal flooding issues will be again on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, especially south of Oregon Inlet, Buxton, those areas, Rodanthe, and also Ocracoke Island under those coastal flood warnings. Also, the south side of the Sounds where the water gets pushed down from the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound. So much the same up there. They're used to it. In fact, they had overwash late last week, and there was hardly anything to look at on the weather map as far as a good push of wind and water.
Yeah, I will say, and our approach to this, it could have been obviously a lot worse had we had any direct impact. So you can kind of keep it as a top story, but be mindful that it's not going to be as bad as it could have been. So I like your levity, Mike. I will say, to add to that, we did have even a county official out of Brevard County in Florida say, hey, careful with the trash tonight. You don't want it to blow around. And I'm thinking, okay, if that's what county officials are saying, then, we know we're okay. We're okay to stay out of the water.
Well, my phone's been blowing up with snarky text, run for your lives. I hope the crew is safe, and by gosh, get off the beach. So there's a lot of levity there today.
Right.
But you have to understand that we kind of live and die by the models. And last week, even the Google DeepMind had some members bringing it to the coast. I will say the Google AI model, the mean of all the members, kept it off the coast the entire past 7 days. So again, it has really been performing well. It actually did better with the Aaron track than the European, which is unfortunately a better model than the American GFS, generally speaking, statistically.
Yeah.
So the Google DeepMind AI model gets the W on this one for being so persistent with a mean forecast of keeping this away from the coast. But when you've got two other models forecasting a landfall and forecasting upwards of 2 feet of rain, you just can't ignore that, and that's why there was all the concern late last week. And there was also a lot of, I would say, dribble on the internet about two storms coming together and and forming the superstorm, and some of that is not to be believed, but there's a lot on the internet you shouldn't believe, if you know what I mean.
Especially nowadays. No, I agree. Watching AI has been a really fun one. We'll see how it does the rest of the season. And here we go, yet again, very lucky so far this hurricane season in the Atlantic.
Yes.
Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel out of Folly Beach. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, and right now we're getting our first squall here, Marissa, on the beach at Folly Beach. Winds have gusted about 20 miles an hour. Out at the buoy, they've been gusting about 25 miles an hour. So even offshore, about 45 miles at Edisto Buoy, the winds aren't that much stronger. But you get the squall, the visibility comes down, it rains pretty hard. We'll look off in this direction, and you can see the beach is emptied out. We had a few folks out here earlier. Still some surfers. There's one surfer walking up the beach, and there's the surf. It is generally increasing, and certainly the sets are not clean like they were. More wave action, 3 to 4 footers. The near coast buoy is at about 4.5 feet. Edisto peaked at 7.5 a couple hours ago. I say peak, that's the highest wave height they've measured. Right now they're reporting 6.6 footers. But those numbers will come up as the swell from Umberto continues to propagate our way, and then we'll have the wave action from Imelda. Rain is really the only story here at Folly Beach and for coastal South Carolina. Now, most of it has fallen this morning up in the Grand Strand area around Myrtle Beach. With that said, we're not talking about prolific amounts, and there are no flood watches or flash flood warnings, but that's where it's been kind of rotating in. And now we're getting some here down across the central and southern coast of South Carolina. So it's rain today and tonight. Tomorrow we got the sun coming back out. We're still going to have a pretty good breeze, though, tomorrow, and the surf is going to stay up all week long. In fact, the Weather Service has the high surf advisory. That's going to run right on through Saturday morning. So if you're thinking about coming to the beach, the sun will be out. Temperatures are going to be in the 70s. It's going to be fallish. Water's still in the upper 70s, so still swimmable. But my suggestion is don't go in past your ankles, because we're going to have the rip current issue daily, especially around low tide. And also, there are no lifeguards on the beach anymore. So you're swimming on an unguarded beach, and it's just better to be safe than sorry, Marissa. But our first squall, certainly nothing I haven't seen before. But it is actually raining, and we had expected a lot more rain late last week, but now we're talking about generally a half an inch or less, generally speaking. There could be some locally higher totals here in the Charleston area. Marissa?
Yeah, it looks a lot. We were talking to Michael earlier, Michael Estime, who's in Florida this morning in Melbourne Beach, and he even had the sun peek out. But for your perspective, it just looks very gray. You have the rain jacket on. It just, yeah. And to your point, Mike, it's one of those things where everybody being safe is fully within our control. It could have been much worse, especially with the flood threat. But as long as folks stay out of the water, we're going to be able to get out of this one pretty lucky.
Scotch-free, as you would say, scotch-free.
Scotch-free. It just sounds better. Just sounds better. I appreciate Mike listening.
I was thinking, you know, I heard the Scotch tape, but I was thinking maybe it's just plain Scotch. You were, you know, having the Freudian slip.
I was thinking that too. Maybe you're not Scotch-free because, you know, you're in
That
the
Monday morning bevy, you feeling it?
That Monday
before the
morning
noontime
bevy.
hour?
Hey, we all know what people do before you get a landfalling system. I've been in Florida for landfalling tropical systems. Trust me, people are having a bevy or two.
Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah, hurricane parties.
People they batten down the hatches, as Steven said. Batten down the hatches. Mike, appreciate you. All right, Mike
Keeping things
Seidel.
light despite the weather.
Keeping things light. Yeah, despite getting some rain and wind. Thanks
to him right now. If he's got his audio back, Mike Seidel out there on Folly Beach, just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. A little gray for sure. Mike, it's great to see you. And like I said before, I'm glad I haven't talked to you in a couple months. No offense, but that means we haven't seen a big storm landfalling yet this year. That's good.
No, let's keep it that way. Although we're going to keep an eye on Bermuda with this particular one. Not Umberto, but Imelda making a beeline towards Bermuda of the middle of the week. Back here at Folly Beach, we had a squall. If you were watching us about 45 minutes ago, it rained very hard. It was gusty for about 7 or 8 minutes. That's it. I looked at the regional rain gauges, the local weather stations, personal weather stations, and the rainfalls since midnight have generally been less than 1/10 of an inch. I did see one in downtown Charleston at 0.16. Look at the radar right now. You can see that heavier band that is just off to our south and west. It's now moved through downtown Charleston here at Folly Beach, heading down towards Hilton Head. But the bulk of the rain, if we widen out, you can see most of it's been falling up the coast from Georgetown, Pawleys up to the Grand Strand. The Myrtle Beach Airport so far has had 2/3 of an inch of rain since early this morning. So they've done better than here. In fact, 2/3 of that fell in an hour. Surf is still up here, and it's going to continue to come up with the swell from Umberto and also from Imelda. Tide is coming in, and it's going to be high in about 45 minutes, just before 1 p.m. Eastern. Wave heights generally 3 to 4 feet. The offshore buoys have been above 7 feet, 7 to 8 feet so far, and that will ramp up too to double digits. In fact, here we expect wave heights pounding these beaches as we get into tomorrow into Wednesday as high as 10 to 12 feet. In fact, the high surf advisory is up, and that continues, get this, through 8 a.m. Saturday. So if you're thinking about coming out here to the beach because the sun is going to come back out, we're going to have some beautiful fall weather coming up starting tomorrow. Remember, you've got the surf, you've got the rip currents, and that risk is life-threatening. And there are no lifeguards anymore in these beaches here in Folly. And most of the beaches on the East Coast, I'd say, outside of Florida, are not being guarded anymore. I'm speaking out of turn. There may be a few guards at some spots, but by and large, the majority of the beaches are not being guarded because it is almost October. The water is cooling off, although the water here hasn't dropped too far. It was in the low 80s. Now it's down around 76 to 77 degrees. And we've had surfers in again this morning. Let me show you the surfing action from yesterday, and you can see the difference in the swell and in the water and the wave heights as the surfers pick up and hang some tent. Had a couple gals out there, some guys doing not a bad job. You gotta give them credit. They're taking what they can get. That's about all you can do these days in a lot of things in life. But today the water is more chopped up, and there were some surfers earlier. I don't see anything on any of them on either side of the pier right now. So our concerns are very limited now because the track is so far offshore. In fact, the closest approach later on today and tonight will be pushing 375 miles off to the south-southeast. So what does that mean? Rip currents, high surf, storm surge, off the list. Coastal flooding pretty much off the list here, but we do have that concern up in the Outer Banks. There is a coastal flood warning. The suspect area is, again, Highway 12. That may be shut down again. Make sure you check with the NCDOT folks. Buxton, Overwash, Rodanthe, those homes still on stilts that are not livable. And then you go down to Ocracoke Island, which is synonymous with Overwash, and they're looking like they're going to have to deal with that too for at least a couple of high tide cycles. So we're left with the rain, and Bob and Steven were not left with much rain at all. It's amazing how things turned around with the models, especially the American and European models, because last week we were looking at forecast astronomical totals, up to 20 to 25 inches of rain in South Carolina and parts of North Carolina, but now we're looking at a half an inch or less in most areas. So flash flooding, flood watches not on the table, just kind of a bad beach day, and we'll get the sun back out for you the rest of the week. And cooler temperatures, well, not so much cooler, but lower humidity. We'll have that northeast wind. It's going to be breezy out here the rest of the week because of the pressure gradient. And just reiterating, the surf is going to rise, come up, and 8, 10, 12 footers, and the surf is going to be rough, and it's going to be up through the end of the week.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, it's a first quarter moon tonight too, so astronomically it's going to be a lower tide anyway. Mike, have you had lunch yet?
Right.
Our question is, I've got twofold question. Did you eat at Rita's? Because you're at Folly Beach.
I had breakfast. I had my go-to here at Pier 101. It's a egg white shrimp and crab meat omelet.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Crab meat.
Pretty good.
So that tracks with lobster.
So listen, for your lunch, we were laying down odds for what you would get for lunch. That wasn't on the board.
well, that was breakfast. Lunch is probably going to be right across the street at Rita's. I've been doing the food tour. I did Taco Boy. I did Catch 22 from the rooftop yesterday, and I'm going to try Rita's today. Maybe get some peel-and-eat shrimp and a piece of grilled fish.
Oh, so close. Mike, you got to stay healthy.
Nourished and hydrated.
We had 2-to-1 odds. You'd have a grouper sandwich with no fries and a side salad. That was 2-to-1 odds. 3-to-1 odds was you'd have the seaside salad with grouper. And the 5-to-1 odds, which is what Steven picked, was a lobster roll. I gave you high odds on that you wouldn't do that.
You know, I looked at the menu yesterday. They do have a lobster roll, but it's only $22 or $23. And when I see lobster rolls, much like when I see crab cakes at a low price than what I see back at my home turf in Maryland and Delaware, I'm a little worried about the
quality.
You know, what kind of grade it's going to get. But I had a lobster roll. When I covered that nor'easter, remember up on Cape Cod, right before Memorial Day,
right.
I had a lobster roll, and this thing was massive, like this big. I mean, you could hardly eat it, and it was $38. And it was worth every stinking Fox weather dollar. Trust me.
Still within budget.
I love talking about everything beach-wise, including the restaurants, my friend. You do such a good job. Mike Seidel, thank you very much. You're not getting rained on yet, which is good, but we'll check back in with you, see what happens in Folly Beach. Mike Seidel, South Carolina. Great stuff. Mike Seidel on the beach in Folly right now, and the conditions, listen, weather-wise, atmospherically, not terrible, but what a big change since yesterday with the ocean.
The ocean is rougher. The wind has picked up now, running northeast at about 15 miles an hour. And what do we have now? A high tide. So the high tide's coming in. It will probably be a little higher than normal the next couple of days, not because of the moon, just because of the push from Umberto and Imelda. But I noticed here from the recent high tide that we've got a little bit of a drop off here, some erosion here. Not much. About 8 to 12 inches. So there is going to be some erosion over the coming days. There's the surf coming under the pier. I noticed the surfers, well, we've got a few way out there. Ben Trailer behind the camera, way out there. You can hardly see them bobbing in the wash tub Atlantic Ocean. Water temp now 76, 77 degrees. So it's warm, and many of them are not wearing any kind of suit. But certainly a rougher Atlantic, more wind, and a little bit of rain today. We had some Saturday briefly. Yesterday was just ideal to be out on the beach. You didn't have to worry about getting sunburned. Of course, remember the sun angle now is like the 10th or 12th of March. And the temperature was only about 80 degrees. So there's a decent crowd out here, more surfers. They were playing volleyball. Again, it was a Sunday. What's in store? Well, Imelda takes the right turn, and about as close as it's going to get is the next 6 to 12 hours, so just under 400 miles south-southeast of here. So with that turn, that takes a lot of impacts off the table. We started talking about that Saturday and then again yesterday, meaning the surge is not an issue. We'll have a little bit higher than average tide. The main impact on the beaches will be high surf. The high surf advisory from the Weather Service now goes until 8 a.m. Saturday morning. It's only Monday today. Wow. So we're going to have wave issues and surf issues and rip current issues all week long because of Umberto and Imelda following that. In fact, Imelda is making a beeline now. Wednesday date unfortunately, for the island of Bermuda out there in the Atlantic. The rainfall has been pretty much on the light side, sporadic where I am. There's been more rain up towards the Grand Strand and those areas, and some spots have had over ½ an inch of rain so far. But it's not coming down hard enough, fast enough to cause any flash flooding, and there have been no watches issued. I don't expect any, and there have been no flash flood warnings. Now, the main concern about higher than average tides and overwash, once again, the normally always hot outer banks because of the low elevation, and it's basically a barrier island with that dune. So Highway 12, south of Ocracoke down through Verdanthe, Avon into Buxton, subject to overwash and subject to closing, especially from Buxton to the ferry, and then Ocracoke Island also under coastal flood warning for high tides and overwash. So that's the main impact on the beaches as far as high water. Here, not concerned about that, as the wave heights will come up. In fact, 8 to 12 footers expected here by the time we get to tomorrow, Wednesday. Then Thursday and Friday, they'll drop back to 6 to 8 to 9 footers. Still very high wave heights. And again, rip currents, beaches are unguarded, guys, and the concern is folks going in the water and getting themselves in trouble. So if you don't have to, the ideal way is just to walk in the surf, ankle deep, and leave it at that until we get to the weekend, just to be on the safe side.
All right. I'm telling you, we've seen you in worse storms for sure, but yeah, the waves are no joke.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Meteorologist Mike Seidel out there.
This is nothing to mess around with. You know, it may not look that bad, and I've seen rip currents on days where there's hardly any wave action. You don't necessarily have to have big waves to have rip currents.
No.
It's really about the shape of the coast, the time of low tide, and what's going on with the wind direction. So just because you don't have big waves. Now, we're going to have big waves, and hopefully those big waves that move in here from Umberto and Imelda will keep the people out of the water, except for the surfers. Just stay on the safe side. I know it's very compelling. The other thing, it's going to be in the mid-70s with a pretty good northeast wind with low dew points, so that evaporative cooling will kick in if you come out of the water over the next several days.
You'll feel a little chilly. You get out there.
It's lunchtime, by the way. Hey, by the way, it's lunchtime. I'll be back at 2:30 Eastern, and we'll probably talk about the 5-to-1 odds for lunch versus the 2-to-1 odds, as we discussed earlier.
All right, good, Mike. I can't wait to see what you come up with out there at Rita's. Good stuff.
I want to take some of that action.
Okay, we'll
find out if I'm getting paid on Fox Weather Now this afternoon.
Nice. We'll check in with you with the beach conditions and your lunch conditions when we come back to see you, Mike. Good stuff. Mike Seidel is out there in Folly Beach right now, and you're back. And again, you've got the rain gear on, but just hardly anything. You go up to your neighbor up to the north, Robert Ray, is getting pounded with heavy rain.
Yeah, I noticed the latest stop out of Myrtle Beach. Now the airport is inland, but they're getting about the same amount of rain. It's coming over the area, so it's going to be about the same total-wise. As of 2 p.m., they've had 88/100ths of an inch, so not far from an inch of rain. That's fallen since early this morning. In fact, in the 6 a.m. hour this morning, they had almost a ½ an inch of rain. That's a pretty good squall or pretty good rainfall rate, ½ an inch an hour. Meanwhile, we've got the surf up. High tide was about an hour or so ago, and look, it's still coming up here, and it is causing a little bit of beach erosion. We've got a bit of a drop-off here as you look down the beach here. It's not much. It's about 10 to 12 inches, but the water's still coming up, so the water is running higher than average. Our next low tide is coming up early this evening. As the tide goes out, it is being pushed a little bit by the wind, which is blowing just a hair onshore, north and northeast, and we're gusting about 15 miles an hour. The buoy, the Edisto buoy offshore by about 45 miles, has been gusting 26 miles an hour. I know these are not big numbers, and they're not going to be big numbers. And the wave heights out there have peaked at 7.5 feet today. Right now, we're running at about 6.5 feet. The close-in buoy from Charleston is running at about 4.5 feet. So the actual big swell, the bigger swell from Umberto has not arrived yet. But the ocean certainly is more churned up and looks more stormy. I guess I could say more stormy than it did this time yesterday. Plus, yesterday we didn't have any rain. It was really a nice beach day out here yesterday. Despite the lack of sun, it was just comfortable. There was a nice breeze. And we've got a few folks out on the beach, and we've got the pigeons. And the only story left to tell now is really the beach erosion, the high surf. The advisory goes through Saturday morning. So we're going to be dealing with excessive wave heights here through Friday. Some of those heights will crank out about 10 to 12 feet as we get into tomorrow and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday they'll start to subside. So if you're coming out thinking about going in the water, my advice is don't go in too far, maybe ankles, knees at best, because the rip currents can take you out there. These beaches now, being the fact that it's off season and it's almost the 1st of October, are unguarded. So Bob and Kiana, that is where we stand. A whole different picture than we thought we'd see last Thursday and Friday out here at Folly Beach.
Listen, nobody's complaining about that at all. But Mike, the other big story, lunch, Rita's. What'd you go with?
Lunch at Rita's. Let me turn around this way. The wind is going to take my hat down to Hilton Head. I had the grouper sandwich. There you go, Bob. You called it.
Yeah, that's a. What did you get a side with it?
It comes with a few little fries. I went ahead and broke the rules, but the grouper was cooked perfectly. It was grilled with some lettuce on a big brioche bun, so I got plenty of carbs and a couple glasses of water. I'm good to go till dinner time. So there's your update.
I love it.
By the way, I did learn something today about seagulls. You know, I grew up on the beach in Maryland and Delaware, and seagulls were a part of my childhood. But I did find out today that the seagulls are interested in, but the pigeons aren't, gummy bears. I had a little packet of gummies, and I threw one out there. Seagull takes it and runs off with it. The pigeon picked it up and dropped it. Didn't want to have anything to do with the gummies.
Well, listen,
so there you go.
The pigeon
so there
has
is a
more...
difference between seagulls and pigeons.
That's right.
What's that?
The pigeons have more of a discerning palate, and we all knew that. Mike Seidel out there in South Carolina. Appreciate you.
I don't know how scientific that survey was, but I thought it was seriously interesting that pigeons won't eat gummies, but the seagulls will. I don't know what that tells you about the birds.
Seagulls will eat
but as
anything.
you mentioned, yeah, well, they're kind of like flying rats.
Yeah, they are.
So.
I love it. Mike Seidel out there in Folly Beach, South Carolina, just outside of Charleston. Mike, always entertaining. I love it.
Always.
Let's get out there. We've got Fox Weather's storm specialist, Mike Seidel. He's live in Folly Beach, South Carolina. Mike, you've got kind of the western periphery of this ragged look to Imelda, right? You're on that western edge of some of the lighter rain.
Yes, and I was just checking my latest stop from Myrtle Beach International, and they picked up another, you see here, 1700s between 2 and 3. So now their storm total is 1.05. And let's show you the local radar, including Charleston and up towards Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. You can see the rain kind of funneling into the Grand Strand and then back towards Fayetteville and I-95. Some rain around Raleigh-Durham this afternoon and this evening. But down here, we've had barely any rainfall, generally less than 1/10 of an inch. We had the one squall we showed you live on Fox Weather earlier this afternoon. That was it right now. Just a few scattered raindrops coming down. The wind has been running north at about 15 miles an hour. And I want to show you a video I shot just about an hour ago out on the pier. You get out on the water, above the water on the pier, and those winds are sustained at about 15 miles an hour. And you can see the wave action and a lot of the beach with the waves and the surf up. But it's a little misrepresenting the way I'm shooting it. There's still a lot of beach where there's sand. It's not getting up towards the dune line just the way it looks like that. But look at the waves. Churned up today, 4-footers, 3 to 4 footers. I just checked the buoy just offshore of Charleston, and 4.6. I keep checking the buoy at Edisto. That's about 45 miles southeast of here. And their peak was this morning at 7.5. They're running generally now between about 6.5 and 6.9. So the swell from Umberto has certainly not really arrived here. the waves have ramped up since yesterday, because the Edisto yesterday was about 4.5, and now they're 6.5 to 7. We show you the radar. Again, there's really not much of a story left here inland. It's all about the beaches, and it's all about the surf. We've got the high surf advisory up now until 8 a.m. Saturday morning. That, along with rip currents, means you should stay out of the water. These beaches are unguarded, and you're putting your life at risk. Ankle deep, maybe you want to risk your knees, but you don't want to get pulled out because there's really nobody out here. You can see very few people on the beach right now to go in and save you, and then they put their life in jeopardy. So enjoy walking the surf, but don't go too far out. These surf conditions will be up through the week because Umberto has still not made its closest approach to here. And remember, that was a Cat 5 hurricane, so it's churning up the Atlantic, and the waves propagate away in all directions. And those waves coming on shore, we call that swell because it's created far away. Same with Imelda. We'll get the swell and the wave action from Imelda combined to get this surf up 8 to 10, potentially 12 footers from this point on, from tonight and Tuesday on, right on through Friday. But the weather's going to get much better. We'll have some sunshine tomorrow, and the rest of the week looks delightful, fallish here in South Carolina, with temperatures in the 70s to near 80, and overnight lows back away from the ocean will be back into the at least the upper 50s. So there you go, Ian. A turn of events that we wouldn't have guessed about a week ago today. But look at this. It turned out as good as it could turn out, making a right turn and going out into the Atlantic. Now we keep an eye on Bermuda because it is heading in that direction, but maybe it'll miss it to the south. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
The worst situation would be if that hurricane went right along it just north of the island of Bermuda. So we've got a couple of days to settle that out.
Yeah, Mike, I was thinking about you saying Myrtle, just a little bit over an inch. It's odd in the sense that if Umberto, a major hurricane, which presents hazards, of course, if that didn't exist to erode that subtropical ridge, you could be talking about rain totals. You had mentioned that earlier, perhaps up into the double digits.
Yeah, we saw that last week, the models, the global models, the Euro and the GFS. We were looking at these, what we call QPF, quantitative precipitation forecasts, and that is basically a fancy way to say total rainfall. And the models, remember you were watching those?
Yeah.
You were going, oh my gosh, could be another disaster. And it was also putting out substantial rainfall in western North Carolina, and they just went through the first anniversary of Helene's impacts, which started on the 27th of September last year, and that was this past Saturday. So it could have been horrible up there, disastrous, and even in the low country, say from 95 to the coast. But fortunately, the turn, and we're left with barely. If somebody told me even yesterday we wouldn't even get an inch of rain, I would have been surprised. But nothing surprises me anymore, Stephen, in meteorology, or I should say Ian, in meteorology. It's a very humbling experience.
Always.
You know, what they used to say, we get paid even if we're wrong. If I had $1 every time I heard that.
Oh, my God. Yeah. If I use those dollars to buy Bitcoin, I'd be like an ultra billionaire. Mike, we don't have much time left, so I can report back to BVD. Was it peel and eat shrimp for lunch? Is that what you ended up going with?
No, he asked me last hour.
What was it?
He asked me at 2:30. It was the grouper sandwich, and it was.
Now I'm mad because you said it was going to be the grouper. He's got you figured out, Mike. So yeah, that's 1-0 Bob this go around. That's our storm specialist, Mike Seidel, out in South Carolina. Mike, thanks for the report. We'll be checking back. Thank you. There's a possibility there. Let's check back in with Fox Weather storm specialist Mike Seidel. He's live in Folly Beach, South Carolina. Mike, I'm wondering, as we move through the short term, kind of a messy look with Imelda interacting with that front that's close by or over your head. If this really starts to tighten up and shed some of all that messiness adjacent to it.
Indeed, and the rain today has been primarily north of us. It's been funneling in up towards Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. Just checked the OBS as of 4 p.m. Wilmington is at 0.61, so just below 2/3 of an inch. And Myrtle Beach now up to 1 1/3 inches. So they've had substantial rainfall, but keep in mind, Out of that inch and a third, about half an inch fell in the 6 a.m. hour this morning. So there's been no flash flood warnings. There are no flood watches. The only statements we have from the local weather service offices deal with the beaches. And we're talking about rip currents and high surf. High surf advisory. This is a long-term one. I don't know if I've ever seen one this long. It goes right now until 8 a.m. Saturday. That's right, 8 a.m. Saturday, because Umberto and Imelda are going to add in the swell that comes to the coast. Right now you're looking at the surf here at the pier. Oh, there is a couple of surfers bobbing out there. Look at that. I thought they had all headed for the hills, but there are a couple out there trying to catch some waves. It was a busy weekend for surfers, despite the wave heights being 3 feet. But let me show you a video I shot from out on the pier, give you a better idea up above the surf and looking back towards the beaches of how different the Atlantic looks now than it did, say, 2 days ago. It definitely is rougher. Waves are a little bit higher, but not substantially higher. The buoy, offshore, nearshore buoy, I should say, about 4.5 to 5. Edisto buoy I've been keeping a close eye on. Now, that's about 45 miles off to the southeast, 41 nautical miles. And the peak wind gust I've seen so far is 29 miles an hour, and the peak wave height has been 7.5 feet. That's not too terribly high, but these numbers are going to come up as all that rough water, all that wave action we call swell, propagates away towards these beaches, not only here, but also up through the Outer Banks, where we have the risk of coastal flooding again. Those normally suspect areas. Highway 12, remember with Aaron, it was closed for, 3 days, while it closed Wednesday or Thursday, and it reopened on Saturday. Overwash, particularly a problem around Buxton, then the south end of the Cape over to the bridge, over to the pier, where you take the ferry over to Ocracoke Island. They, too, could have more overwash. Not surprising. And even later this week, those waves will head towards the Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey coastline. So the bottom line is, keep in mind, most of these beaches from here north are unguarded now. We're heading towards the first weekend of October. So my suggestion is to stay out of the water, not more than ankle or even at tops knee deep, because the currents can pull you out. And if there's nobody on the beach like today, look at this. We've had a few people walking up and down the beach. Not a bad day because we haven't had much rain, but you don't want to get caught out there and lose your life like we had, unfortunately, with a gentleman down in Florida. We want to get through this. Now that it's going out to sea, we want to get through this unscathed here from this point on. So the number one impact in the beach, the surf, high surf, the rip currents, a little bit of erosion. The rain is not a major factor. And once it decided, the models got on board, all of them, along with the Google AI model, that it wasn't going to come at the coast. That took really the surge off the board and the overwash and the coastal flooding for this part of the coast.
Yeah, Mike, I'm thinking about that. These AI models nailing it. There's going to be a lot of studying that goes into what exactly played out. But you just said the key message, and you know these places well. You're out and about, and you're talking to folks. What are people saying about that turn? I would have to think that, I mean, as far as scenarios go, this could not have gotten better for the Southeast.
There was a lot of discussion over the weekend because we got here Friday, and at that point, the European and US GFS models were still saying, at least most of their ensemble members saying we were going to have a landfall Monday night or Tuesday or Monday afternoon. And then they started backing off late Friday night and Saturday, but people were coming up to me, and there was a general concern. In fact, the city of Folly Beach shut down their city hall Friday for the duration. Fortunately, everything is fine now. Schools went in as usual today, the Citadel too, the College of Charleston. But there was a lot of concern. And then once it started making the turn, everybody started to pick up on that via social media or TV. And that's how it all ends up. It couldn't have ended up any easier on us here. We'll take a little beach erosion and some high waves versus a direct impact from, say, a Cat 1 or a Cat 2 hurricane. And the other very important thing is, we've talked about this, is it was supposed to slow down as it moved onshore, much like it's kind of slowing down right now in the Bahamas. And that was going to drop prolific amounts of rainfall. And the models last week were forecasting 20 plus inches of rain on this area, the coast, the low country, and back inland, even north and west of Interstate 95. We saw that with Florence and what that did for area rivers, creeks, streams, shut down I-95 up near Fayetteville 2 or 3 days later because of a stalled tropical system. And I mentioned the other day, I remember covering a system in Mobile Bay years ago on another network, and it stalled out and fell apart. It was a depression, and it dropped 30 to 35 inches of rain. So we have to be very thankful that, A, it didn't make a landfall and then stall out. It can stall out and rain all at once over the Atlantic, but over land, you have all kinds of issues. So we have been very lucky this year with Aaron and now with Imelda, and hopefully that is it for the season. But remember, from here through October and even into November, we have to watch the Southwest Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico for systems developing, sometimes on the end of old fronts. And then with jet stream dipping down, they usually bring those systems up towards the Gulf Coast. In 2020, the year of COVID, I covered my last tropical system in mid-November around the Tampa Bay area. That's the year we went into the Greek alphabet. So it goes to show you that we can even have systems into November, but they primarily are Gulf Coast and Florida systems. It's hard to get anything north of the Outer Banks once you get into the first couple weeks of October.
Yeah,
but it has happened. Remember Sandy. Remember Sandy in 2012.
Yeah, Etas and Iotas that season, but amen to everything that you said. I mean, this thing makes a hard right, and there's much rejoicing, and rightfully so. That's our storm specialist, Mike Seidel, out in South Carolina. Mike, thank you.